Last time the squad barely escaped Jessie Land, but what will happen when they encounter some eccentric pirates? Level 12. That was the beginning of a legend revolving around a certain island and dragon. We currently find the squad exploring an ancient dwarven tunnel. Inside, they find some bugs, new equipment, and trigger an Indiana Jones-style trap. After escaping, they continue heading east toward the ocean, eventually stopping to make camp for the night. It's while sitting around this campfire that we learn that Satora is basically a jack of all trades, which she became through hard work and training. She also begins crying as she thinks about her childhood and how she's been exiled from the hidden village. Yume then proceeds to comfort her, just as Kichi warns them of approaching danger. Moments later, we see Haru creeping through the forest, stalking a horde of skeletons and zombies. Suddenly something moves behind him and he jumps back to find Mary looking directly at him. He watches as her eyes drift towards the ground and as she bites down on her trembling lip. Mary states that she's afraid of herself and that sometimes she feels like her consciousness is slipping out of her body. Haru knows that he needs to act, but he is unsure of what to do in this situation, so he simply embraces her, which causes her to say,
"I've been waiting."
The squad regroups and continues heading east through the mountains where they stop to eat on a hill. Suddenly, this so-called hill begins to move, and everyone steps off except for Yume and Shiho, who are forced to jump to the ground. Kuzaku catches Shiho, and Mary uses a fire spell to knock over the forest giant, just as she's assailed by a tremendous headache, though Haru swiftly comes to her rescue, grabbing her hand and pulling her to safety. It took some time, but the squad has finally reached the peak of the mountain, where they see the vast ocean off in the distance. Haru is completely stunned by the beauty laid out before him, and I'm not referring to the ocean. Yume then spots a ship off in the distance that seems to have run aground. They cautiously approach the beach where they find a crew consisting of numerous different races. Haru decides it's probably best to just avoid the crew entirely, just as they hear a loud bang followed by a pebble-sized indentation at their feet. They then come face to face with the captain, who I'm not even going to attempt to describe. Just know that she talks and acts in a way very reminiscent of Yume. Captain Momohina then challenges them to a 1-versus-1 fist fight, and Haru steps up to the plate. Momo prepares herself, stating that this will be easy, and then proceeds to promptly kick the shit out of Haru. Momo actually won so one-sidedly that she was able to time an explosive spell to go off to the exact moment of her victory. She then introduces herself as Momohina, the Kung Fu mage woman of the K&K Pirate Company. She also claims the squad as her newest underlings. In the following days, Haru and Kuzaku spent their time helping and assisting the crew, all the while the girls were training with Momo. Eventually, another ship does arrive, captained by the annoying Genzi, and the squad climbs aboard, immediately getting seasick. It's during this journey that we are introduced to an undead pirate named Jimmy. Then after an unknown amount of time, the ship arrives at the Emerald Archipelago, which is essentially a safe haven for pirates. However, there is currently 2 dragons demolishing the city, and Mary then explains that the dragons have peacefully inhabited these islands for a very long time. Eventually, the dragons fly away, allowing the squad to enter port and meet the manager of the K&K Pirate Company. Momo proceeds to explain that the squad is her newest underlings, and that Yume has some serious kung fu potential. Everyone then ignores Genzi as Haru offers to investigate the dragon attacks, under the condition that they will be set free afterwards. The K&K Pirate Company accepts, and we then find Haru and Mary searching one of the destroyed docks. They don't find anything and don't have much to go off of, but their assumption is that a pirate must have done something to anger the dragons. Haru then remembers that he's completely head over heels for Mary, as she mentions something about potentially asking the natives. The squad regroups and leaves the city at sunrise in order to meet up with Jimmy and avoid the dragons. Haru asks if there is anyone on the island that knows more about the dragons, and Jimmy mentions the natives and brings them to see a fox pirate. Tisa is a native from the island and explains that the dragons are revered as gods, and that a black curse will fall upon anyone who tries to meddle in their affairs. We then get Chapter 9, which isn't much more than your typical mandatory beach episode. Moving on, we find Tisa leading the squad deep into the forest. They pass another fox person, and Haru asks Tisa if it returns home often. He then immediately puts his dagger to Tisa's neck as the squad is quickly surrounded, captured, and led to the village. After arriving at the village, they come face to face with a massive fox and the fox chieftain. They say that humans are not allowed in the forest, and they refuse to listen to the squad's situation. Tisa then steps in and begins arguing on their behalf, when suddenly the village begins chanting, and as the beefy fox named Mwadon steps up, challenging them to a duel. Kuzaku accepts the challenge, stepping into the ring where their weapons are removed, and this all happens as Tisa explains that the purpose of this ritual is to ward off the Black Curse. Kuzaku opens the fight with a powerful hook, which Mwadon purposely accepts with his face. He then retaliates with a blow, bringing Kuzaku to his knees. Mwadon immediately raises Kuzaku over his head, slamming him down onto his knee for a backbreaker. Kuzaku gets up with a massive headbutt, followed by tackling Mwadon to the ground and showering him with punches. They end up separating and standing up, where they take turns trading completely defenseless blows. This brutal contest ends with Mwadon collapsing into Kuzaku's arms as the crowd roars in the background. Mary then heals both of them with sacrament, and everyone begins drinking and partying. It's during this commotion that the chief explains that 3 humans attempted to enter into the dragon nest. However, they ran into another fox tribe, which killed one of them and chased off the others. The squad returns to town the very next day to find that Jimmy has discovered 3 suspicious individuals, one of which has gone missing. Haru then approaches a man nicknamed Honeydin, who immediately begins to flee. Satora trips him and firmly plants her foot on his chest, allowing them to tie him up and drag him back to Momo's ship. Satora then threatens to peel his face like an apple if he doesn't begin talking, but Momo interrupts them, saying that pirates have a special way to extract information. She orders Jimmy to retrieve the item, which she uses to tickle the information out of Honeydin. Apparently, a guy named Red-Eye Ben hatched a scheme to steal a dragon egg, and he then convinced Honeydin and Step to assist him. Now, their first attempt failed with Step dying, but their second attempt was very much a success. Honeydin then leads the squad to Red-Eye Ben's hideout, where Haru draws his knife and sneaks into the cave just to be kicked by Ben. Haru retreats outside only to stab and tackle Ben back into the cave, and they wind up rolling out of the cave and falling down the cliff. Haru manages to use Ben's body to survive the fall, and he then begins searching the area for the egg. The squad did survive this encounter completely unharmed, but they are also completely eggless. They then discuss what to do next when Honeydin lets slip that Ben was a frequent liar. Haru then returns to search Ben's hideout, where he finds the dragon egg buried underground. They meet up with the K&K pirates and the fox people, where they all agree that the egg needs to be returned to the nest. Momo then asks for the egg, which Haru promptly refuses. Haru is well aware that K&K is unable to return them to the mainland until the dragons return to being peaceful, and this is why he demands a large reward for returning the egg to the nest. Tisa and Mwadon lead them through the forest to a dark, eerie-looking crevice, saying that this is as far as they can go. Honeydin refuses to re-enter the rock and runs away, only to be taken captive by Mwadon. Momohina then leads the way into the crevice, as giant worms begin falling from the walls onto the squad. They panic a lot, but eventually make it out the other side, only with some heavy emotional trauma. The squad continues through the forest for a few days, encountering some very unique and downright weird animals. Eventually, they come to and climb a mountain where they find the dragon's nest. A baby dragon flies out, sees them, and immediately begins shrieking. They bolt back down the mountain and quickly hide in the forest just as the adult dragons return home. Haru then shoves Shiho out of the way as a dragon lands right next to him and begins thrashing around. He instinctively latches onto its massive leg by stabbing his daggers into its scales, just as the beast flies up into the sky while Haru struggles to hold on. There were a few moments where he almost lost his grip, but by some miracle he just managed to hold on. The dragon descends and lands in the city, where Haru carefully backs away and sets the egg on the ground. After that, the dragon attack stopped, the city was repaired, and Haru was nicknamed Dragon Rider, along with a 500 gold coin reward. Then the squad boards a ship and sets sail to Vale, just to realize that Yume is missing. They look back at the dock to find Yume standing next to Momo, with tears streaming down her face. Yume shouts that she's going to stay and train with Momo in order to grow stronger, and that she promises to see them again in Alterna in 6 months' time. If you enjoyed this series, then I guarantee you will enjoy this video as well. Thank you to all my patrons, and a special shout out to my 2 newest patrons, Don John and Nonums. And of course, I'll see you all in Volume 13.